Hi, my name is Keeley and welcome back to my reading nook. Today I am going to be talking about my September wrap-up, which is super exciting. I always love looking back at these videos and like seeing what I read when, and I love watching everybody else's on BookTube because it's just so fun to see what everybody read and get some recommendations. So I hope that some of these, some of you find helpful. Yeah, it's just really fun to recap. I guess what I'll do to start off is talk about my reading month as a whole, which, in a word, disappointing. Not because of any of the books that I read, but because of my actual reading habits. I alluded to this like in every video, but when school started in September, things got really busy for me and it just became next to impossible to fit in significant reading time. So based on those constraints, I'm proud of what I have here, but in any other month, like if I wasn't doing school right now, it would be pretty pitiful. But I still think it's going to be exciting to talk through the books that I do have, and I am going to talk about the couple of books that I've started but not finished in the month of September, because I feel like those kind of count, and I will hopefully be finishing them up relatively soon. So I posted my October TBR, and a couple of the books from this September wrap-up are probably going to bleed into October. So yeah, just kind of a preface. It was a tough reading month. There wasn't a lot that I was able to finish, but the ones that I did, I really enjoyed. So it was a disappointing reading month, but the reads themselves weren't disappointing, if that makes sense. So we have 4 books here, which 4 books completed I'd be pretty proud of during a school month. However, I only finished 2 of them. So yeah, 2 books for the whole month of September, and one of them is quite small, as you will see, but that's okay. Sometimes you have, reading months that go like this and that. So yeah, I'll be talking, like I said, about the books that I started and didn't finish, but first I'm going to start with the first book that I read this month, which is The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. As you can see, I have this very tiny, very old copy that I like a lot. This was the first time that I'd read it, and truly, like I said, it's very short. This entire book is like, I think like 130 pages. So it's tiny. But that was nice. I kind of needed that. I read it right at the beginning of the year, right as school was, the beginning of the year. I'm conditioned to say that because like the beginning of the school year, but what I meant to say was the beginning of the school year, so the beginning of the month of September. I sat down and just read it in one sitting, which was super fun. Like I hadn't really, had that feeling in a while where you just sit down and just cover to cover read a book. So that was really fun, and I've really never read any Ernest Hemingway. I think I'm going to film a mini haul video soon, but I recently bought another Hemingway, so I really enjoyed this. I'm excited to read more of his works in the future. I think, this one's incredibly famous, but it's also very small, and he has other books that are longer, like Farewell to Arms and For Whom the Bell Tolls. I've heard good things about For Whom the Bell Tolls, so I want to check that one out for sure. So the plot of The Old Man and the Sea is basically, I believe they live in Cuba. It's an old man and a young boy, and they're fishermen. They live in a fishing village somewhere where they speak Spanish. I believe it's Cuba, if I'm not wrong. Let's see if I can find it. But it's an old man. I think his name is Santiago. So it's an old man, and he's a fisherman, and he's kind of spent his entire life in this fishing village, this fishing culture, and it's very atmospheric. Like you can really picture the kind of town that they live in, and this little boy kind of idolizes him and takes care of him because he's very old and he doesn't have family or children or siblings left to take care of him. So they have this really kind of sweet relationship where the boy wants to learn how to fish from the old man, but his parents want him to learn to fish from the more commercial, younger fishermen in the village, so the younger men. But the little boy has kind of a soft spot for this old man, and the old man fishes by himself, which is pretty impressive because, you know, it's a very strenuous job. I mean, he ties all the lines, he rows, he does all the things on his own. And at the beginning of the book, he kind of decides that he's gonna take a trip out and like really commit to finding fish, which he hasn't in a while. We're kind of opening up on the man feeling optimistic but like not having a lot of success recently, and the young boy believes in him but is a little bit doubtful, it seems. And so the entirety of the book basically is him on his solo fishing trip, where I won't give it away, but he has kind of an adventure on his very own like little boat, and he ends up far from home. And a lot of people say that it's kind of slow, but I really enjoyed it. Like, I thought that the story was so sweet, and I really loved the ending. I would be so curious to hear if any of you guys have read it, because a lot of people that I've talked to have said like, oh my god, that was so boring, I couldn't even like get through it, and it was so short. But I really didn't find that. Like, I thought it was great. I thought it was so fun. I was on the edge of my seat, and I was invested in the characters, and specifically the relationship between the little boy and the man. I thought it was really sweet, and I think it was a cool way to show, you know, a life in a culture that's very different than my own, like a livelihood created with your hands, and like that way of life. It was really, really cool to hear. I also thought that there were a lot of really cute like baseball references, which was fun. It was the old man talking about Joe DiMaggio and like all of these people. He's super into like following the baseball seasons like through the newspapers, and I just thought it was kind of awesome. I really, really liked it, and I think it was fun to have a classic that I hadn't read before, that I could just kind of like throw myself into and read super quickly. So The Old Man and the Sea, I think I give it like 4 stars. I mean, it definitely, like, it almost reads to me like a parable or like a fable more so than a novel, just because it is so short, and like the plot is not very like you know, up and down and up and down. It's pretty like singular, but I think I give it 4 stars. Like, I really enjoyed it, and if you're looking to kind of check off a book and like feel productive, I find that it's nice to do that with really short books sometimes. So I think this is a great one to pick up if you're looking to get into some classics, kind of expand your horizons, and you want something quick, something, you know, ocean themed. I thought this was a cool one to read in September, and kind of cap off the summer reading where I was reading a lot of nautical themed books. So yeah, that's The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. Now the next book that I finished, and the final book that I finished in the month of September, was The Maidens by Michaelities. Michaelitis? I still don't know. And every time I watch somebody's TBR or wrap up that has a book by him on it, they also don't know. So I kind of gave up, and I think I'm going to say Michaelities, just for me, myself, and I, until I hear otherwise. If you know how to pronounce it, please let me know. But The Maidens by Michaelities. This one I was super excited to read in September because it's very dark academia. It takes place at Cambridge University, and there's like a series of murders that are happening, and the murders are tinged with Greek mythology references, and so it really has like this dark academia, thriller, murder, mystery. It's so fascinating. Like, there's a lot of discussion about like group mentality. The main character in this book is Mariana, and she is a group therapist. So her niece, Zoe, goes to Cambridge, and she went to Cambridge when she was in college. And you basically watch Zoe bring Mariana in and say like, hey, like, there's some scary stuff going on campus, because Zoe's friend is the first victim of these killings. And so Zoe is kind of like, hey, there's some crazy stuff going on, I'm a little bit freaked out, like, what the heck? And then Mariana comes to visit her from London in Cambridge to go and say, like, you know, support her through this time. And while Mariana's visiting, like, the murders keep occurring. So you're kind of watching Mariana from this group therapist perspective, like kind of analyze the psychology of the different suspects and the different people that are involved with the case. Like, you know, the basis of the book is that Mariana's convinced that she knows who did it and that it's a professor. And so you watch her kind of try to analyze the professor, analyze the students, analyze, you know, everybody who works there and everybody's reactions to the killings. So I was on the edge of my seat through this one. It went really quickly, but I felt like the plot was well developed. It's been a while since I read a thriller, and this one, like, I will say, the twist got me. I hesitate to say that because I don't want people to read it and then be like, it didn't get them, you know what I mean? But it's been so long since I read a thriller that I just think, like, my mindset wasn't, like, as skeptical maybe as it usually is. And the thing that makes me excited about this is because I've heard that the twist in The Silent Patient, which is the other really popular book by Alex Michaelities, I've heard that twist is even crazier than this one. But I was reading this on the couch in my apartment and I was like, oh my god. When the twist happened, I was actually shocked. So if you're looking for something like kind of October, September, like fall vibes, dark academia, thriller, murder mystery, I'd say it's not, I don't really like thrillers that are gory. I wouldn't say that it's gory. I think it's more so about the mystery component and about the atmosphere of Cambridge and like the dark academia sentiment. So I would highly recommend it. I really enjoyed it. And I think for me the mark of a good thriller, again, is just like, does the twist come across as predictable for me? And for me it wasn't. So I don't know, if you've read it and you thought differently, I'd love to hear that. I think that'd be so interesting. But I was a big fan, and I think I would probably give this like 4.5 out of 5 stars. I reserve the 5 stars for like such a powerful, like, oh my god, favorite book of all time. But this was great. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'd highly recommend it if you're looking for something for this fall season. Again, like lots of Greek myth, lots of dark academia, all the spooky fall things. What's not to love? So that was The Maidens by Alex Michaelities. And then, okay, so now we get into the books that I started but didn't finish. Wow, kind of sad. I really wish that I had finished them. I wish I could tell you guys that I did, but unfortunately it's just not how this month shook out. So the first book that I started reading right after The Maidens, and I introduced this in my September TBR, I read both of these books, or at least I intended to finish both of them, but I started both of them in the month of September at the same, like, similar times, because I really wanted to compare them to each other, and I feel like I could still speak on that, even though I'm not very far into the second book. And that second book is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I'm really not far at all into this book, like I'm only 50 pages in or something, and this book is like over 500, so it's big, like, you know, yes, I'm not that far into it, but it was a little bit of an intimidating read for me, like, during such a busy month, so I have a feeling this was going to be one that I kind of chip away at, but right off the bat, really enjoyed it. The atmosphere of this one is very similar to the one in The Maidens, but this one's in not New Hampshire. It's in a college in New England, and it's like also very dark academia, very Greek myth, murder mystery. So it's kind of funny, like they're literally the same book in different fonts, if that makes sense to anybody. So this one is less thriller and more like heady, kind of. It's more, I don't know, what's the word for that? Like it's more drawn out and like, it's more of a slow build. It's not a thriller. So this one, you're following one character and you're watching him move from his town in California to this like New England liberal arts college where he wants to study Greek mythology under this very mysterious professor. And the difference between this one and The Maidens, well, there's a lot, but like this, in The Maidens, you open up and you know that the murder has happened, you know there's a suspect, you know, you got the lay of the land. In this one, you know that the murder has happened, and you know that the main character that you're following was a part of it. And you know that he and his group of friends were a part of this murder. And then the rest of the book is this main character reflecting on it. And so you see it happen, and then you watch like how it builds up to that moment happening, which is fascinating, obviously, because like as soon as you read about the murder, you're kind of like, oh my god, like how did this group of friends get to this point? Like what's happening? But it's very like, oh, this is the word I was looking for. My friend described it as cerebral, which sounds like very academic and like fancy schmancy, but that's like a good way to describe it because it is just very thinky. Like it's very Donna Tartt. If you guys have read The Goldfinch, you kind of know what I'm talking about. Beautiful writer, like really, really beautiful writing, but it can just be a little bit dense. It can be a little bit slow paced. I'm just gonna say it. I think her writing is really beautiful, but I wasn't a big fan of The Goldfinch. This one, I actually had to DNF The Goldfinch, to be honest with you. I haven't finished it, but this one I think I definitely will because I love the atmosphere and I love the content of it like so much more than I loved The Goldfinch. So I'm like really invested in this one. But again, I didn't finish it. I'm loving it so far, but I won't give a full rating on it until I'm done with it. I do want to do in the future maybe a book where I compare these two, like after like a book club video where I talk to people who have read both of these and like see what we think about comparing the two to each other. The Secret History is like twice the length of the Maiden, so that's also going to play into it, but yeah, overall I think that's just the absolute best description of these books is the same book in a different font. That's just what it is. And I love them both because I think that the dark academia vibe is something that I really like in a book, so I'm fine with reading things that are like super similar content-wise, but I'll be really curious to see at the end of both of them which one I prefer because right now I really like both of them and I honestly can't predict. So that was book number 3 that I started, which is the first one that I started and didn't finish. And because this one is so, as I said, cerebral, I wanted to start something a little bit fast-paced, a little bit more digestible, a little bit easier to read. So I started a book by one of my favorite authors, which is David Sedaris, and this is Let's Talk Diabetes with Owls. Hello, so sorry for the change in quality. My memory card ran out of battery, which is a little bit interesting. I'm gonna have to figure that out. But the next book that I read was Let's Talk Diabetes with Owls, which was by one of my favorite authors, which is David Sedaris. For those of you who don't know who he is, he's kind of like an essayist. He writes funny essays, clips, he's super honest, and I like his dry humor. Him and I have very different lives, but I find his stuff very entertaining. So basically I've been flying through it. I'm over halfway now, but I still haven't finished it. So that's why, again, it has to be a book that I started this month, but didn't actually finish. I think this one that I might finish sooner than I finish The Secret History, but it's definitely getting pushed into October, which is a little bit sad. I love David Sedaris, so I was bound to love this, but so far I think I would put it below Me Talk Pretty One Day, maybe on par with Calypso, if anybody else is familiar with his stuff. But yeah, I don't know, like I'm really enjoying just reading funny essays. It's so easy to get through because you read one and it's a complete story, so you feel really accomplished, which I love. And it was a feeling that I needed at the end of this month to kind of kickstart my reading again and feel like I was productive. But yeah, so overall this month I have 2 books that I started and didn't finish. Donna Tartt's The Secret History, David Sedaris' Let's Talk Diabetes with Owls. Then 2 books that I did finish, Michaelities' The Maidens, and Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man in the Sea. So yeah, that was my reading month. I look forward to finishing these other 2 books. But overall, I mean, the 2 that I finished were 4 stars and 4.5 stars, so I mean, that's pretty darn good. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me in my reading nook. I hope that you had a great reading month. I hope you had a great time sitting in my reading nook with me. Yeah, and I wish you the happiest October ever. Thank you so much for coming. I will see you next time. Bye.